Colleague for me, David Foster, and welcome to our weekly look at events inside Syria. A danger to the world. That's how the UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi describes the conflict. He met Bashar al-Assad on Saturday, hoping, like others before him, to bring an end to the 18-month conflict. He also had meetings with Syrian opposition and Russian as well as Chinese diplomats. So far, Assad's forces have ignored appeals to end the fighting. And activists say as many as 27,000 people have now been killed. Only 2 weeks into his new role, Brahimi has a tough job ahead. But the joint envoy remains hopeful.
It is still very difficult. It will remain difficult. But I think these kind of missions need to be undertaken. I am not undertaking it because I'm looking for a quick success for myself. I have undertaken it because I am very hopeful that I will be able to help, however little, the people of Syria. Try and help the parties find the common ground. The common ground does exist. These are Syrians. They love their country. They want peace in their country. And perhaps we can help them achieve that.
I'm joined by our three guests on Inside Syria. From Rome, Bassam Imadi, member of the Syrian National Council and a former Syrian ambassador to Sweden. From Washington, D.C., David Mack, Middle East Institute scholar and former US ambassador. And from Ankara, Hussein Bachi, political analyst and a professor at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara. Ambassador Mack, may I come to you first? As he finished his meeting with the Syrian president, Lakhdar Brahimi stepped out and said, "I repeat, I currently do not have a plan." Are those the words of somebody who believes he can really change the situation inside Syria?
Those are the type of things one expects from Lakhdar Brahimi. I dealt with him personally when I was in government. I think it's fair to say that people in the State Department have a great deal of respect for Ambassador Brahimi. He has a long and distinguished career as a mediator, but we are realistic. We know that he has a history of managing crises, not solving them, and we should not expect that he would have a plan for a solution. That's not his way. His way will be to wait until there are changes on the ground that make the parties ready for some kind of solution, and then he'll be there to help broker it. And I think that's a good thing.
Mr. Imadi, when somebody says, "I'm sorry, I really don't quite know which direction I'm going in," and he's the last person that the outside world believes might be able to solve this situation, are we expecting too much of Lakhdar Brahimi?
Good evening. Well, actually, yes, everybody is expecting too much of him because, first of all, the problem is not the problem of a person who is making this mediation or anything else. The main problem is the regime, which is transigent. The regime doesn't want to make any compromise. The regime wants either to completely crush the revolution or, the inevitable end of the regime would be to be crushed by the revolution. There is no compromise with this regime. We saw this with the plan of Annan. We saw this with the initiative of the Arab League. We saw that in every move everybody has done, and the regime has never implemented any initiative, not even one item of the initiative. So we expect Brahimi to fail as others did. But I have a comment here to make to Mr. David Mack, who said that Brahimi is going to wait for the parties to be ready for a compromise. Actually, unfortunately, this is the situation. The world and the world community has been waiting for such a move to happen from the regime and from the revolution so that a compromise would be reached. And in the process, there are thousands and thousands of lives that have been wasted only because the world community is not willing to put pressure on the regime to stop the killing, to finish and end those bombardments of cities and towns. And this is very regrettable.
Well, Mr. Bachi, I saw you nodding there as we mentioned the words China, Iran and Russia. Mr. Brahimi's had meetings with representatives of these countries. What possibly could he have said to each one of their representatives that might make them change their minds on the situation inside Syria?
I think all these three countries are not going to change their minds. First of all, Russia is the most important supporter of Syrian regime. China is the next one, and of course Iran is a neighboring country and important supporting country of Syria is there. And I think all the two speakers have been indicating how Mr. Brahimi is going to be not successful. I think it is a try, but not to reach any solution or compromise, because the regime in Syria is trying to survive, and the Syrian opposition is trying to destroy the regime. So there is no common point. One is trying for survival, and the other one going to bring it down. So the question is here, who is going to win in the long run? At the moment, it looks that Mr. Bashar al-Assad has better cards in his hand, not only through the developments in recent days, but also that Russia, not only providing political support together with China in the United Nations, but also the world community at the moment is losing more and more interest in Syrian case because the Syrian opposition in military and political sense, they cannot come together and create one political leader who can convene all these different views among the opposition groups and then appear as the counterpart against Bashar al-Assad. So if there is no political actor, why Assad should leave? Another point, maybe
I'm going to stop you there because I want to explore more at the moment the nature of the character of Lakhdar Brahimi and what influence he may bring to bear. Okay. David Mack, back to you. Brahimi said, "Never in my career have I felt that a situation is hopeless or that change is impossible." And yet you say he manages crises rather than solves them. What do you make of his position right now and his character?
I think he's the sort of person who waits to see some evolving developments that creates a situation in which he can play a useful role, but he doesn't pretend he's going to be central to the solution. We've just had another UN mediator, Kofi Annan, former Secretary General, distinguished world statesman, backed up with a UN Security Council resolution, and he had a plan, and we've seen that that wasn't sufficient. I think Ambassador Imadi is correct that the international community was not ready to take a strong role. The international community is diverse. It's not one person. The international community includes a diverse group of nations, and we know that Russia and China have not been helpful. This has been very frustrating to the United States. Both President Obama and Secretary Clinton spent a lot of time trying to change the Russian position on this. We didn't succeed. But there are things that can happen in the interim. There are things that the Syrian National Council, for which Ambassador Imadi is a part, can do. They can do a better job of reaching out to the Alawite community, to Christians, to Kurds, and others, and create a greater and more cohesive opposition body that could negotiate with the Syrians. There are things that can be done by the Syrian government. Who knows? There could be an internal coup that would remove Bashar al-Assad, and then we'd have a different cast of characters to deal with.
Which leads me to a point I want to put, excuse me, Ambassador, to Ambassador Imadi. When he came out of the meeting with Bashar al-Assad, Lakhdar Brahimi said, "I believe that the president realizes more than me the dimensions and the dangers of this crisis." Other than the fact that he may lose his office and at worst may lose his life, what dangers do you think President Bashar al-Assad sees in this crisis?
Well, actually, I think he realized at the end that he has no future in Syria, and if he doesn't accept to step down and accept the offers that have been given to him to go and live somewhere in Iran or Russia or some other country which has been supporting him, if he doesn't do that, he will lose his life, as you said, as you rightly said.
So is he worried simply on a personal level, or is he concerned, do you think, from the point of view of regional conflagration, from the dangers it could pose for those Syrian people for whom he presumably has some concern?
Well, to tell you the truth, the situation is like this. At the beginning of the revolution, he was sure that he could crush the revolution. But with time, he used more and more force and brutal force in order to crush the revolution. But I think by now, he has realized, he and the people around him have realized that there is no way they could win this, this battle. But they are still stubborn and they don't want to give in. Actually, they realize that what they have done could not be done without consequences for him, for his family, for the people around him. And I don't think he cares much about his sect or the people on the ground. So I can say that the end of Assad is really determined.
And when Mr. Brahimi
we'll
said
see him like Gaddafi or
I'm simply saying, when Mr. Brahimi says he talked with the opposition and the opposition have brought some new ideas, what opposition is he talking about and what new ideas do you think there might be?
Well, I'll tell you, since you mentioned the opposition, I must tell you something. People are talking too much about the opposition being not united, or they should give some assurances to the minorities and this and that. But all this is meaningless. What is meaningful is what is going on the ground. What is going on the ground? The revolutionaries, those Free Syrian Army, the new military revolutionary councils who have taken over the majority of the Syrian territory. The regime now is really helpless.
But Mr. Bachi, let me move on from that point. Take this up with you in Turkey. If, as Ambassador Imadi says, that there is no real sense of the opposition, that isn't the point at the moment, it's simply about the atrocities being committed by the Assad regime. Without a serious opposition, the dangers post-conflict for Syria and Syrians is as great as it is now.
First of all, Turkey has been supporting the opposition from the very beginning, in the same line with the United States of America and the European Union. Mr. Ahmadi is, of course, one of the leading personalities, no doubt about it. But his description of the events do not reflect the political realities today. If he would tell it 1 month or 2 months ago, probably it would be right. Every day now, Mr. Bashar is getting stronger because he is supported by Russia and by China, and the revolutionaries look to be not successful to realize a revolution. It is a failed revolution per se in the history. We can see that there are revolution attempts, but if the time is lasting longer, then not only the people on the ground, but also those who support them are getting fed up. Turkish policy, for example, is not supported by the Turkish people. The Syrian opposition knows this exactly. This is the only point where the Turkish public is not supporting Tayyip Erdogan's foreign policy in the last 10 years. So why? The reason is very simple. Because the Syrian opposition is not acting as one. There is not one political leader, there is not a strong army, and what the revolutionaries, the so-called revolutionaries are doing in Syria, killing civilian people, it has a very negative implications also in Turkish mind, because they do not expect that those who want to make revolution, they should fight the Bashar al-Assad regimes, but not the civilians. This is one. The second one,
David Mack,
probably, which is
Mr. Bachi suggests that Bashar al-Assad is now stronger, in fact, than he was a couple of months ago. Is that your assessment?
Yes, I think his position has stabilized somewhat after a series of really serious reversals, including defections, including the bombings in downtown Damascus, in which a number of his key supporters were killed. I think the situation has stabilized a little bit, and very unfortunately what's taking place now in the Arab world in terms of a reaction from the people and groups in countries that have recently overthrown their leaders does not incline the international community to take a stronger position in supporting a rather indistinct and I want to be charitable about the Syrian National Council, because I know members of this group. I'm very sympathetic with them. I want them to succeed. But I can tell you, I have harsh experience in dealing with the Iraqi opposition, when for a period of 12 years we invested a tremendous amount of time, high leadership contacts with the top people in our government, funding, arms, etc. And in the end, they still were not able to overthrow the Saddam Hussein regime. And what's taken place in Iraq after the military overthrow of Saddam has not been very pretty. So with that kind of harsh experience and with what's going on in the Arab world today, and I just had a close friend of mine killed in Libya in the last few days, that kind of thing makes people very, very cautious about dealing with a group of opposition activists who, however noble they might seem, appear to be somebody that you couldn't really rely upon.
Well, let me put that to the other ambassador, Ambassador Imadi. I'm sure these wouldn't be the words chosen by a diplomat such as David Mack, but the suggestion seems to be that you're amateurish and you underestimated a very stubborn Assad, and you're in a weaker position now than you were 3 to 4 months ago.
Well, let me start by saying those who put a lot of weight for the National Council or any other opposition group, they are mistaken, because it should be very well understood. The political side means nothing for the revolution. The revolution is on the ground, it's strong, it's becoming stronger. The problem was the barricade and the blockade made on qualitative weapons that the revolutionaries could not get. What they needed was missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, anti-tank missiles, and let me say the truth. The West was banning any kind of such weapons coming into Syria, and that's why we saw that Assad was more encouraged to bomb cities and towns and destroy almost 40 or 50% of Syria now. Now, the situation on the ground is becoming better, and fortunately enough, the Free Syrian Army and other groups have got some qualitative weapons recently. Maybe not enough, but we hope that they will have enough to stop the brutal bombardment of their cities. Now, to talk about the other side, that Assad is becoming stronger, I don't know where people have this perception. Assad has lost all control over the north of Syria. All the north of Syria is free now. The only way Assad can go there is by bombarding those places, and there is virtually a free zone in the north of Syria. Now, if we want to continue like this, it is true, it will take a long time, it will take too many lives that they should not be wasted. What is needed now is for the world community to take a stand. The world community has been showing too many excuses and just accepting the veto of Russia, the veto of China, and relying and resting behind these vetoes.
If I may interrupt, while all this is going on,
to take the responsibility and start doing something.
In Turkey, and while all this is going on, the patience of governments such as yours is running out, because the refugee flood into Turkey from Syria has been pretty enormous. The security problem on the border is pretty large when Turkey has its own issues with which it has to deal. And pretty soon, Turkey's going to say enough is enough, stop the refugees coming in, and already it's tightened up its patrols along the border to stop the flow of arms that Mr. Imadi wants to see going from a country such as Turkey into Syria.
First of all, yesterday Ms. Angelina Jolie has been in Turkey, and she was accepted with a great joy. Therefore, the number of Syrian people flowing into Turkey, coming into Turkey, is increasing, and this is a great domestic problem in Turkey. The Turkish people are not happy with this situation because nobody knows how many thousand will come more and what the main aim of these people are. Mr. Imadi is, of course, optimistic. I understand him. Therefore, we, the political analysts, we have to see the realities. The world community does not act. Why? Because Russia and China supporting. And another point, this free zone in the north of Syria, technically Mr. Imadi is right, but how to bring heavy weapons there and how to build a strong army to fight with Mr. Bashar Assad. Turkey is at the moment also getting tired, at least Turkish Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, when I look to their statements, I see that they are not so enthusiastic as it was the case 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months ago. So what I indicate is the more Syrian opposition is not providing a strong political leadership, the world community is not going to support. In Germany, for example, the part of Syrian opposition is meeting in the last 6 months. The talks are still going on in Berlin, like in Turkey and some other parts of the world. But since 6 months, there is not one person and there is no concrete suggestions how to get Mr. Assad down.
There is one question, excuse me, that I would like to put to each one of you before we end this edition of Inside Syria, and it's the prospects of any kind of settlement under Lakhdar Brahimi. This is a man who mediated the peace plan in Lebanon, ending the civil war there. He's been the UN representative in Afghanistan, Iraq. He's worked in Yemen, Liberia, Sudan, Zaire, and he says rather modestly, if I'm considered a peacemaker, then perhaps I am. He is a very different character to Kofi Annan in the sense that he has Arab roots, but he doesn't have the ability to pick up the phone necessarily and call presidents and secretaries of state. David Mack, what does he need to do?
I have to agree with Ambassador Imadi that his role is not going to be critical until there are some changes on the ground. You mentioned his success in mediating the solution in Lebanon. I was in the government at the time. I was dealing with that. I can tell you that there was a tremendous amount of work that was done by great powers with the various Lebanese parties. Governments like those of the United States and France and Saudi Arabia were all working on the various Lebanese parties, and Lakhdar Brahimi was merely a point of liaison. People could be brought together under his auspices, but he was not the one.
So he was a facilitator. Okay, Ambassador Mack, thank you very much indeed. Ambassador Imadi, what does he need to do? Well, okay, since you made the suggestion, what changes do there need to be on the ground before he can do any good?
Well, actually, changes are taking place, and I can tell you all he could do is to tell Assad, when you are ready to step down and fly to another country, please tell me. And he could go and rest until that happens, because before that, Assad is not going to change his way of dealing with the revolution. Assad is not going to stop bombarding the cities. And by the way, the veto of Russia and China and all the efforts of other countries will do nothing, because Assad will not change his mind. So the best thing for Brahimi to do is now really to deliver this message and wait, because I think the developments on the ground are not going to be like before.
Mr. Bachi, have you seen any changes on the ground that lead you to believe that Ambassador Imadi is going in the right direction with his thoughts?
I think Mr. Imadi is negotiating, but how can you tell to somebody, I want to get you out of government and I will put myself there? I mean, Bashar Assad is not so stupid to accept this. Mr. Brahimi's problem is here that he is not having two sides where they can come to a political concession and agree to form a new government or new system. The problem is, as Mr. Imadi is indicating, they want to get rid of Bashar Assad. This is difficult for Mr. Brahimi to achieve any result. My suggestion to Mr. Imadi, if they go to the negotiations with this, definitely Mr. Bashar Assad would not accept this. What they can do, they should come about a new structure of the state, probably with Mr. Bashar Assad or with him, but based on not his life, that he is going to lose his life or he has to leave to somewhere. They have to find a different way to negotiate. Mr. Brahimi is going to try to do this, but I don't see any solution as far as the opposition is having this mind.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Our guests who've joined us today, Bassam Imadi in Rome, David Mack from Washington, D.C., and Hussein Bachi from Ankara. We thank you all for being on Inside Syria. And thanks to you for watching. Al Jazeera aims to have the most comprehensive coverage of the situation in Syria in our news bulletins, around the clock, and on our website, aljazeera.com, where we have the stories, the background, and the analysis from our teams in Syria and across the region. From everybody here on Inside Syria, and from me, David Foster. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.